Welcome back to another episode of the Successful Driver Podcast. Thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with us today. And I'm excited that Lewie Pugh, the Executive Vice President of OOIDA, is spending a little bit of time with us today. Lewie, what is up, my friend?
Hey, it's my pleasure to be on your show. Thanks for having me. And just hanging out here at the office at Grain Valley, trying to stay busy and fight for the rights of truckers, right?
Hey, Lewie, we might have been able to do this one in person because you're right down 70 highway from us. You know, we're working on getting our studio set up for this podcast and a lot of other stuff at Arrow. We should have just called you up and had you come down.
Yeah, that'd have been fine. I'd do anything to get out of the office. Anytime you want me to come on, just give me a call. I'm still a trucker, so I still have a lot of wanderlust, I guess you would say, and me like to get out and go somewhere.
Yeah. So. I'll keep that in mind next time. And, next time we hit you up, we'll make sure to get you here to the new studio. But Lewie, I appreciate your time. We just want to talk to you about a bunch of different things. But first off, we always just like to hear about the person we're talking to. I want to hear about your history in the trucking industry.
Well, I started trucking, I guess, professionally when I turned 21. Prior to that, I drove truck in the Army. That's what I did. Graduated high school, left the day after I graduated, went to the service, drove tractor trailer in the Army. And it seemed like that's all I wanted to do. I always make the joke, but there's a lot of truth to the fact I grew up on a farm in Ohio, but there's a lot of truth that I ever since I saw Smokey and the Bandit, all I ever wanted to do is be a truck driver. So with that being said, as soon as I turned 21, I got my CDO on my 21st birthday and went to work for a big motor carrier for about 9 months and found out it wasn't my fit. So I went to work for a local owner operator back home in Ohio, where I'm from originally. And I worked for him for about 9 months. And then I bought my own truck and had my own truck until 2018 or 19. I actually came off the road in 2017 when I was asked to come here to OOIDA to work. And I kept my truck for about a year and a half, 2 years, just to make sure I could give it up completely, I guess you'd say. And I guess I have, but I sure do miss it a lot. But after being an owner operator for 20 plus years, small business, and like I said, I've always loved trucking. I love truckers, and it's a different lifestyle. It's a hard lifestyle. And but I was very blessed to be in the industry. I still consider myself blessed. And as hard as the industry was, it was very good. It's been very good to me my entire career. And there's not much I can, as far as trucking itself, there's not much I can say bad about it. Now, if we want to talk about some of the stuff that's happening to trucking, then that's not because of trucking.
So, hey, Lewie, what was your last truck then?
My last truck?
Yeah.
Was a 2012 International Pro Star.
Nice.
I bought new, and unfortunately, I had some issues like some others did with the Max Force engine and lived all the pollution stuff firsthand. I was kind of debating at the time because I traded trucks every 4 to 5 years. I was going to get a glider, and looking back, that would have been a smart choice. But at the time, with who was the people who were in office and in charge, I was afraid that maybe gliders were going to kind of get put out, and you're going to have it. So that's why I bought it. But that was the bad part. The good part was, and I'll say this, Navistar and my local dealer back in Ohio, Truck Sales in Midvale, Ohio, they did everything they could to take care of me and make things right. And they did. I won't say anything bad about it at all because everybody has problems. It's what you do when you have that problem is what makes the difference. And they did what they should do. And I'm forever grateful for that as well.
All right, Lewie, we ask this question to everybody that comes on this podcast. I'm excited to ask you because you're not too far removed from the road. What makes a successful driver?
There's a lot of things that make a successful driver. I guess and there's more things that make successful owner operators. I mean, I had 2.5 million miles, and I say, and I stand by it. Luck has a lot to do with it. Skill as well. I mean, you're not a safe driver if you don't have some skill. Training, listening to people who have done it for years, paying attention to them, paying attention to the road, paying attention to your truck. There's a lot of things that go into it. But I do. And, probably people are like, oh my, I don't say it, but it's true. Luck has a lot to do with it. And every trucker can tell you, it's been split seconds that saved me from an accident. The majority of my career, I trucked from Ohio to the East Coast. So I was in New York City, Boston, Baltimore, Philly, Washington, D.C., all great places, with no traffic. And, I'm proud of my record. And just like all truckers, nobody wants to go out and have an accident. But I think there's a lot that goes into it. But training and just learning to pay attention, experience, and a lot of that stuff. I wish that larger motor carriers and stuff would take some of that to heart with their guys, because it seems like we're going down a road wanting safety things instead of worrying about training that guy behind the wheel. And I was fortunate, I feel, personally, because I grew up on a farm. So from the time I was a very little kid, I was driving a tractor and equipment and around that kind of stuff, and was driving a vehicle at 12 or 13 around on the backcountry farm roads and pulling trailers. So I had a lot of, I guess I had the motor skills. I'd learned the motor skills at a young age, which was fortunate for me. But that doesn't take away from the fact maturity levels and other stuff that I probably didn't have when I was 19, 20, even 21 or 22. I still, sometimes at 47, maybe I did.
All right, Lewie. So we always like to ask this too, because, you're in a different, position than you were when you were out on the road. What is your role right now in the truck driver story with OOIDA? What kind are you doing to help drivers find success?
Well, I'm the executive vice president here at OOIDA. And with that, besides doing advocacy, advocacy is a big part of my role here. In normal times, when COVID's not going on, I spend a lot of time in the Capitol. We at OOIDA have lobbyist office in DC. I spend a lot of time going out there working with them. Our lobbyists do a great job, but, they never drove truck. I can give that side of it. Work with our members. I go to a lot of truck shows, stuff like that, talk to our members so I can keep fresh on what's going on the road. And then the big thing that I like to talk about is we do this thing here since I came to OOIDA. We started this thing with our foundation called Truck to Success, which is a chance for guys who drive truck to learn how to be good business guys and learn to be owner operators of a motor carrier if they choose to do so, which I'm proud of our team that does that, and proud of being part of that as well, because that's the problem in trucking. I feel it's very hard. And it was hard for me. It's very hard to find good information or good education. It seems like you get everybody's spin on it. It's whether it's from the carrier, they want you to be a good company employee. And I'm not saying it's bad, but you get the company store mentality, or you get the truck stop lawyer, or you get this. It's really hard to separate the chaff from the straw at times.
So, this last, couple of years has been pretty crazy. There's been a lot with the industry. There's been a lot with how, people within the industry have to do business a little bit differently. What have you noticed the most about the last couple of years in the trucking industry that's just changed so much?
I think I probably is guys have honestly, and I see it even with our board of directors, because our board of OOIDA is made up of drivers. We've all had to get a lot more technology savvy, including me, even in this office, because 2 years ago, I didn't know how to do a Zoom meeting or have any of that kind of stuff. Now it seems like I got 20 of those apps on my phone because everybody uses a different platform, and truckers are having to learn that. Truckers can't get in places due to COVID restrictions. So that's good, bad, or indifferent. And some of the bad stuff, it's just like I hear stories, and we still hear them, where guys aren't allowed in the warehouse and not allowed to use restrooms and stuff like that, that was always a problem in the past when I was on the road, but it just seems like it's really gotten exasperated thanks to COVID and stuff, and everybody was social distancing and all this other stuff. Good, bad, or indifferent, we can all argue that point, and that's for another day. But in the end, that seems like guys don't have the access. They don't have the access to food. Seems like we've lost more parking and stuff like that. So there's been a lot of bad changes as well.
Okay, so one of the things we wanted to talk to you about, and something you guys are working on out there, is there's been a bipartisan bill introduced in the U.S. House of Representatives, the Cullum Owings Large Truck Safe Operating Act. I know you guys made a pretty quick response. Sent a letter to the U.S. DOT, kind of explaining your argument. Can you just kind of maybe give us an outline of the proposal for the Cullum Owings Large Truck Safety Operating Act, and what OOIDA's stance, what their response to that was?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's all about speed limiters. They want to speed limit trucks. And of course, this is something that OOIDA has fought for years and years and years in different forms and different fashions. We're not a proponent of speed limiting vehicles at all. We believe that traffic should, the safest is everybody going the same speed. And I think that's been proven time and time again in states. I mean, even my own. But with that, what they wanted to do was trucks, they want to put everybody 65. But if you would put a couple safety technology, one was advanced or automatic braking, and then it's adaptive cruise control. If you put those two things on your truck, then you could turn your truck up to 70, which again is still slower than the speed limit in some states in the West. So we're still creating that. So now we're going to have not only 2 split speed limits, but actually there'll be 3, because you're going to have 65-mile-an-hour trucks, 70-mile-an-hour trucks, and then whatever the cars get to run up and down the highway. And so, yeah, when this came out, we immediately wrote a letter explaining our point of view and our side, and we will continue to fight this kind of stuff. Again, I go back to what I said in the beginning. It used to be about all these states had split speed limits, and now I think there's 7 or 9, I forget which it is, left that have split speed limits. And I lived in Ohio, and Ohio was infamous for it. And nobody ever thought we'd get rid of 55 for trucks in Ohio, because Ohio made a lot of money off of that. The State Highway Patrol was pretty good at enforcing that. But they finally, on the toll road, put it to everybody running the same speed on the Ohio Turnpike. And they found out that accidents went down, there was less crashes, so then they did it for the whole state, which was, kudos to the state of Ohio for doing that. And a lot of other states have done that too. I mean, again, it goes back to kind of what I said earlier when you asked me what makes a good driver. Too many people out here, and unfortunately, are getting wrapped up in all these technology ideas. And, let's put all this technology on these trucks and it'll make them safer. Okay. What happens when technology doesn't work? And some of this technology isn't proven. I've never driven a truck with automatic braking personally, but I can't believe, or I have a hard time believing, that it's always the safest, because on wet roads or slippery, icy roads, trucks aren't like cars. I know it seems to work on cars. I haven't heard there's a lot of issues, but cars are a lot lighter. So you don't have the impact of them crashing, but also cars usually are hauling things that move. I mean, I look at a tanker. I pulled a tanker for a little while. That stuff's constantly back there moving. And I always joke, when you start driving a tanker, you have to learn to drive all over again. And I did. And because you have to learn to time your shifts, you have to learn to time your braking and all these things. So I'm not a technology person. I'm sure there's somebody out there that's going to say that I'm wrong, but I still find it hard to believe that in real world situations that stuff is always safer. Plus, again, it goes back to, what if that technology breaks? What if that technology fails? There's nothing better than a trained person behind the wheel. And I use airplanes, for example. We know all airplanes can fly themselves. They get up in the sky and all that stuff, is my understanding. But we train the pilot to fly it, because if that stuff goofs up, he's got to be able to fly the plane. So why wouldn't we want trucking to be the same way?
Sure.
We have all these little Band-Aids, but again, at the end of the day, it goes back to, let's start training drivers. Let's put graduated licensing or apprenticeships, or at least a minimum standard of hours of training. I say it all the time. In Ohio, I think it was 1,600 hours to cut hair. But if you can pass CDL test, you're driving a truck. You're looking at a guy that did it, and thank God, nothing happened. But the good thing with me was I had experience in the military prior to that. I had experience on the farm and stuff. A lot of people don't have that. And that's, again, it's just, to me, it's one of these workarounds. It's big carriers and stuff wanting to push their agenda, take away a competitive advantage, to say a little bit, to an owner operator, because their guys can run the speed limit. And, I was an owner operator. I'm not going to say that I didn't speed once in a while, but for the most part, owner operator, you're buying the fuel. And the faster you go, the more fuel you burn. I mean, I know a lot of owner operators that don't drive the speed limit just to conserve fuel, but that's their choice. And so you're taking that thing, you take safety out of the hands of the driver. We've all drove up and down the highway when we've come up on somebody, whether they're sleepy and they're swerving, whether they got their pickup truck loaded with stuff they're moving and they don't have stuff tied down like it should, or a bunch of junk, or a little trailer. We've all come up on somebody that we just want to get past and get away from. And you take that ability away from these truckers. You create road rage, because we've all seen that they call the elephant races, which is everybody's going the same speed. But I don't care if my truck's at 65 and your truck's at 65, it's still not going to be exactly the same speed. Or maybe there's a little bit of weight difference or whatever. And I come up and decide to pass you, and it takes me 9 miles to get past you. And by this time, traffic is all, backed up behind us. So it creates road rage situations. It takes away that safety. And another thing to think about, owner operators, a lot of them drive older equipment, especially nowadays with the problems with the the EPA stuff, and some people on truck guys kind of been keeping their older trucks. Like I said, I had those issues myself. Probably should have kept my older truck. But with that being said, you could take a guy who's got an older truck. If this would pass, he could drive that. He could have been driving for 25 years, never had an accident, and he's going to have to drive 65. While some kid who just come out of trucking school that's 21 years old, no experience, gets in a truck with these two safety things, and he can drive 70. Now, how does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I get you. I get you, man. So one final question I have for you, because we're talking about, owner operators, and there's guys out there that might be wanting to become a first-time owner operator. What is your one piece of advice to someone wanting to become a first-time owner operator?
Take truck to success at OOIDA. Call us. It's in end of October. But seriously, from real world, and but seriously, I would say that, because there is no trucking out there for dummies. Becoming an owner of dummies. It's a great thing. But without being an infomercial, what I would say to guys, and what I learned personally, look around, find other owner operators that are successful, and go talk to them. Don't talk to their truck stop lawyers. Don't talk to the guy who's got 18 ball tires and his hood doesn't match his cab. And I mean, no disrespect to anyone when I say that, but you learn. That's how I became successful. And I mean, I bought my first truck at 22 years old, truck, trailer, equipment, and went into business. But I was fortunate enough that I knew people in my area that were successful, been in the industry forever. I had worked for a small owner operator, and they taught me the business. I stayed kind of in what I knew. That's another thing. But mainly, surround yourself with successful people, and you can be successful too.
Lewie Pugh, Executive Vice President of OOIDA. Thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with us. And thank you for so many thoughtful answers to the questions I asked. Really appreciate your time, my friend.
No problem, Ken. Thanks for having me on. I love anytime you need anything, don't hesitate to ask. My pleasure.
I'll be hitting you up soon. That is another episode of the Successful Driver Podcast. Thank you so much for spending some time watching, listening, wherever you're consuming this. We appreciate you. We'll be back next week. Catch you later.